So what is social security and why does it matter? So when we think about social security, we are really referring to specific forms of government support provided to individuals who have little or no alternative sources of income. So in a sense, in Australia, rather than providing social security payment in a uniform way, the social security system is structured to serve different categories of recipients. And these may include people, young people in particular, families, unemployed people, older people, people with disabilities, carers, and even students. So here we can return to the concept discussed earlier in the semester regarding the significance of categorization and order maintaining in society. So in Australia, we really very much tend to categorize people in relation to the kind of benefit or social security benefit they can get. Young people will get, youth allowance payment, which are quite different from the allowances that older people get, or, child support kind of benefits, and so on and so forth. So in a sense, the provision of income support depends on how individuals are classified, as we've just seen, which in turn influences eligibility rules, payment rates, and even conditions such as the extent of permissible paid work while receiving benefits. So this variation across categories gives rise to different perceptions of deservedness, or what we termed as desert. For instance, more generous payments are often directed towards groups perceived as more entitled to government support, such as recipients of age pension or disability support. And that's quite different from things like youth allowances or the kind of support a student might get, for example. So while we are discussing about this, it is really important to consider how the design of payment system reflects broader discussions about social values and the perceived roles of the government in relation to different groups in the Australian society. So it is very important also to consider and to even clarify key terminologies. In everyday discourse, for example, we often tend to use the term welfare interchangeably with social security. However, in much of the academic and policy literature, welfare, you will see that welfare is really a broader concept encompassing a range of government funded services such as healthcare, education, in addition to social security payments. So in a sense, welfare is really broader than the concept of social security in itself. And again, all those are quite linked to the concept of social protection discussed earlier. So why is social security so important then? And why does it even matter in a class of social security? You can see that really, briefly speaking, social security very much links to the concept of redistribution, which we had already discussed about earlier. And it raises questions of how resources should be redistributed and who must get what under which circumstances in the society. And in a sense, again, this really has a major economic and social consequences. And central to this concept is that it is really, really crucial in the relationship between the individual and the state, what key scholars like Jean-Jacques Rousseau termed as the social contract. So in a sense, social security also raises questions of who's responsible for welfare and well-being of people. Is it, again, the individual? Is it the community, or is it the government? And even to what extent should social security be provided on the basis of social citizenship or the notion of desert, which we had started discussing about in the previous weeks? So in a sense, this is really reminding us and very much highlighting how social security is such a contested policy domain. And if you can still remember, what we called contested is simply a debate which is just creating disagreement between what people perceive as acceptable, important, or not important, or not acceptable. Really hope this is very clear for everyone to start considering as we move on discussing about social security. So social security is also a human right. We really need to acknowledge this beforehand. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, for example, stipulates that everyone has the right to a standard of living that is equal for the health and well-being of himself and of his family, including food, clothing, housing, and medical care, and necessary social services, and the rights to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. Again, you can see all the aspects unpacked here are speaking to the word risk, which we had already started discussing about in the previous recording. So in the next recording, we shall now start to consider, the goals of social security and to see how, we can understand that in social policy.